But again, here's what John McCain said a couple of hours before the vote had actually started in the House, and John McCain was taking credit for what he thought would be its passage. Watch.
I went to Washington last week to make sure that the taxpayers of Ohio and across this great country were not left footing the bill for mistakes made in Wall Street and evil and greed in Washington.
John McCain, as part of that speech, also tried to draw a contrast with Barack Obama. You remember that, of course, John McCain tried to suspend his campaign at the end of last week, and he described this morning that he took a far more active role than Barack Obama. Again, part of the effort to try to take some credit for what McCain thought would be passage. Here's element number 4. Again, this is John McCain talking about Barack Obama and John McCain drawing a contrast in their styles. Watch.
Many of you have noticed it's not my style to simply phone it in. Senator Obama took a very different approach to the crisis our country faced. At first, he didn't want to get involved, and then he was monitoring the situation. That's not leadership, that's watching from the sidelines.
The huge political problem for John McCain is that by boasting of his own leadership on a day when that leadership on all counts seemed to fail, the White House leadership, the Republican leadership, John McCain's leadership, because they did not deliver the votes, that, of course, sets up John McCain in a very precarious political situation. But in the meantime, let's go back now to NBC's Patty Culhane, who is monitoring situations with the current president. And Patty, what is the president doing, and what does the White House think the president can do over the next couple of days?
That's what they've been talking about, David. We heard from the president very briefly. He was meeting with the president of Ukraine, and he made a quick statement just saying that he was very disappointed and that he was going to meet with his team, and they were going to continue to address this economic crisis head on. What you're watching right now, that is the driveway just outside of the West Wing. They just made an announcement over the loudspeakers that Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson was going to be coming out at any moment to address reporters, because that's the big question. What do they do next? Do they try to put this exact same package back for a vote and wait to see if they can twist on just enough members' arms to get them to vote in favor of it? Or are they going just completely back to the drawing board? You know, this whole debate has been about two schools of thought. There was one school, the one that we saw in this proposal, that said, let's give the money to Wall Street and then it will trickle down. There were other economists who said, no, the best way to handle this is to pour money into the housing market to help people stay in their homes, to help people buy homes, and let the housing market settle that way, because obviously the housing crisis is at the heart of this proposal. Now, the administration dismissed that second idea about helping people out individually because it'd just be too big. I mean, how do you distribute $700 billion to individuals? So the question is, are they going to stick with their original concept that the banks and the financial institutions need the help the most, or are they going to look to helping the people directly? So that's a big question. And really, I mean, I was talking to a senior advisor today, and I said, you know, is this going to pass? They said, of course it's going to pass. We saw the president this morning. He went on television and said that he was confident it was going to pass. So I think there was quite a bit of surprise. Even at 12:15, we were hearing from spokespeople that they were confident, that they thought it was going to get through the House. So this really has been an afternoon of regrouping. The president said he was going to meet with his economic team here today, and we just heard Secretary Paulson coming out. As you know, he has really been the point person for the administration. It was his plan to begin with. He's the one who first went to Congress and scared the leadership so much that this was brought up for discussion immediately. And, you know, we were right here at the White House last week, Thursday, when there was that big meeting and everything fell apart. And we heard that Secretary Paulson actually followed the Democrats out of the room and said, please don't let this blow up. And then at one point, the Democrats said, this isn't us. This is your Republicans. You're the ones who are blocking this. And apparently, he half-jokingly got down on one knee and begged. So Secretary Paulson has been very pivotal in trying to make sure that this plan goes through. So a huge disappointment for him and for the president.
Absolutely. NBC's Patty Cohen at the White House. Patty, thanks very much. And again, as Patty pointed out, a huge repudiation for the Bush administration. It's their party, the Republicans in the House, who didn't deliver at least the votes that Nancy Pelosi was expecting them to deliver. 2-1, the Republicans voted against the wishes of President Bush and Treasury Secretary Paulson. We are expecting, as Patty pointed out, that Treasury Secretary Paulson will come out to that stakeout, to the microphones there at the White House, and we will, of course, take that live. In addition, we want to remind you again that John McCain's motorcade has apparently arrived at his location, and he's about to be making a statement on all of this. Again, the challenge for John McCain is to try to backtrack a little bit from this morning when he seemed to be taking responsibility for passage of the bailout before the vote had even started, and, of course, the bailout failed. But I want to talk a little bit now about the immediate and also the longer-term impact for the American people. Neil Irwin is a financial reporter for the Washington Post. And, Neil, in terms of we saw the market collapse today, 770-some points. Describe how that sort of impacts ordinary Americans and what is the danger in the days ahead.
Well, I know everybody wants to pay attention to the stock market, and that was really a massive decline in the global stock market today. But it's really broader than that. What's going on is there's a lot of turmoil in the credit markets, in the lending between banks that's kind of the lifeblood of the modern economy, and in ways that you might not see. So you know, when you get a car loan, it's ultimately coming through banks and through the financial system. When you use a credit card, when your employer borrows some money to build a new factory or to even just handle its short-term obligations like paying the payroll at the end of the week. So that lending has choked up. What's going on with the stock market is more an effect of that than a cause. It's kind of the symptom, not the disease.
By the way, Neil, I'm going to have you stand by just for a second. We just got a statement from the Obama campaign. Of course, we had the statement from Douglas Holtz-Eakin blaming the Democrats and Barack Obama's party for this blowing up today. The Obama campaign has just issued this statement. This is a moment of national crisis, and today's inaction in Congress, as well as the angry and hyper-partisan statement released by the McCain campaign, are exactly why the American people are disgusted with Washington. Neil, you mentioned sort of the sort of impact in terms of meeting payroll. I suppose, for example, if you're a small business even and you borrow from various banks to meet your payroll, or you want to expand, this becomes even more difficult now to do that, right?
It could. We've already seen some of the largest banks in the country get snapped up and be involved in fire sales in just the last week. Wachovia this morning and Washington Mutual last week. The situation for banks is very difficult right now. They don't have liquidity. They don't have the easy access to funds. Normally, if it's a solvent bank, they can easily lend from each other temporarily overnight. Right now, that market is just dried up entirely. So it's like a body with arteries, and the arteries get clogged sometimes. That is what's happening in the American credit markets.
Do we get a sense as far as the overall economic impact? I mean, can we anticipate that the longer this goes on, I mean, the House is now not even scheduled to meet again until Thursday. There's nothing, obviously, for the Senate to consider. Might we expect that there'll be a mood among a lot of people in Wall Street to sell? That would drive the Dow down even further. Obviously, the credit crunch is going to get worse. How does all of this play out?
It could be very bad for the real U.S. economy, not just the workings of Wall Street, but for the ordinary Americans who need a job and want a decent income and that sort of thing. Already, before the effect of this was felt, the economy was getting worse. The unemployment rate, the different measures of output, of what companies are doing, all of those were getting worse, even coming into August and September. Now that this kind of severe impact is being felt, as we start to see September numbers, October, there's every reason to fear that they could be significantly worse, that we could be in a deeper downturn than we were just a few months ago.
Neil Irwin, financial reporter for the Washington Post. Neil, thanks very much. As always, we appreciate it. And again, just a note to our viewers, we're now getting word that, again, John McCain's statement could come at any time. We will bring that to you live. We're also watching the White House to see what Treasury Secretary Paulson says. We're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we hope to have those statements for you live. You're watching MSNBC.